Good morning, everybody. It is August 19th, 2025, and we just had the Zelensky and European Leadership Summit with Trump in Washington. We had the Putin Summit in Alaska. So we've got a lot going on, and I do want to do a video on some of that. There's a lot of fallout happening right now, and I'm kind of intentionally holding off because I want to see how a few more things develop. But one thing that I am very sure of that I thought was really interesting is the incredible disappearing JD Vance. First off, by the way, welcome to all the new subscribers. Happy to have you, and I hope if you like this video, you will like and subscribe. And as always, please feel free to give your opinion in the comments section, good, bad, or otherwise. I love to hear what people have to say. So one of the things that you may remember in the early days of the Trump administration, which, I mean, we're talking all of 6 months ago, JD Vance was everywhere. He was at the Munich Security Conference. He showed up, read the Europeans the Riot Act. He goes to Greenland to say Greenland's got to become part of the United States. He's absolutely attacking Zelensky when Zelensky's in the White House. This is all happening in like the first 30, 40 days of the Trump administration. I mean, Vance is everywhere, and he is just burning every bridge he can get his hands on. Vance is a hardcore isolationist. He wants the United States out of Europe. He wants the United States not involved in the Ukraine war. He really kind of wants the United States out of everything. He wants us just to stay home. You may notice the last few months you have not been hearing much from Vance. He's actually been on vacation constantly. I think he was having his 7th vacation of the year before he hightailed it to Washington in time for the Zelensky summit. And a lot of people were saying, wait a second, he's had not finished his current vacation. He's had several, and he's cutting it short to get back for this meeting. And a lot of people thought, with good reason, that he was going there to try to blow up the meeting and prevent any kind of positive relationship or positive developments between the United States and Ukraine. Vance is very, very pro-Russian. You may remember when the Trump administration sent a delegation to Ukraine in, I want to say it was either February or March of this year, to talk to the Ukrainian political opposition to try to convince them to try to force an election to get rid of Zelensky. Vance he wasn't part of the group that went, but he was part of the group that put that together. He hates Zelensky. He's been trying to literally get Zelensky out of the government. I mean, it's very intense with him. But he showed up and didn't say a word on Monday. I mean, I'm sure he said, hello, how are you? But by and large, he sat there and he kept his mouth shut. That's the first major kind of event he's been at in a while. You notice he was not at the meeting with Putin in Alaska. So he misses that one entirely, and then he shows up at this one but doesn't say anything. Contrast that to how he acted in February when Zelensky was here. So what we're seeing is that JD Vance's role within the administration is being dramatically reduced. Also, the fact that he was on his 7th vacation of the year, and I believe the second one he was on in maybe like a month, maybe just over a month, should tell you a lot about what has happened. Now, there's a couple reasons for this. One is that so far everything Vance has tried has been a disaster. He goes to the Munich Security Conference, absolutely reads the Europeans the Riot Act, and I will say I actually agreed with a lot of his points. I think the rollback of free speech, the rollback of civil liberties, you're seeing a lot of these more left-leaning European states becoming increasingly authoritarian. They're throwing people in jail for posting memes, stuff like that. And he's right about that. But he managed to do it in such a ham-handed, aggressive way. It was a way designed for social media content. It was really supposed to, this clip will look really cool on Twitter kind of concept. The Europeans all hated him. They didn't listen to a word he said. He didn't do anything to help any of the more, center-right or far-right parties in Europe. In fact, he actually hurt them politically. You may also remember he was coming out in support of the AfD for the German elections, and that had absolutely no beneficial impact on them. The other thing is, remember his Greenland trip. He went to Greenland. This was when Trump was saying, almost every day, we have to have Greenland, we have to have Greenland. Vance went there, and his job was to find Greenlanders who wanted to become part of the United States and do a press conference with them. By the time he got there, everybody in Greenland was so turned off, they literally could not find anybody. Now, granted, Greenland only has a little over 50,000 people on it, but still, over 50,000 people, and they couldn't find, 4 people who said, yeah, we want to be part of the United States. So he basically spent the whole time at the U.S. military base in Greenland, because there's nobody in Greenland who wants to talk to him. And then, of course, there's the Zelensky blow-up, which is part of the reason that you saw so many European leaders go with Zelensky to the White House. They wanted to be sure that if Vance started shooting his mouth off, if it wasn't going to just be an international incident with Ukraine, it was going to be with Italy, it was going to be with Great Britain, it was going to be with Germany, it was going to be with France, it was going to be with Finland. It was going to be one of those, you're going to have to blow up a whole bunch of relationships, and you're going to have to do it in Donald Trump's face. which obviously Vance was not going to do. So basically, Vance has been a flop on the international relations. The other reason, in hindsight, I did not think of this at the time. I'm not saying I predicted this. I did not predict this. In hindsight, though, part of what has occurred to me is that ultimately Vance's brand of isolationism is never going to fly with Trump. And here's why. Trump, from a psychological perspective, has nothing to do with policy or politics or geopolitics or security or anything like that. Psychologically, Donald Trump has to be the belle of the ball. He has to be the star of the show. He has to be the center of attention. If you are an isolationist, you are isolated, which means you are not receiving a million foreign leaders. You are not having the world watching your foreign policy. Trump wants the biggest audience he can get his hands on. The bigger, the better. He doesn't care who it is. He just needs more. Well, if you want the biggest audience, you need a global audience. A global audience is bigger than just an American audience because there are 8 billion people in the world and only 340 million of them are Americans. So if you are Trump and you say, I want the... And think about all the times Trump talks about ratings and tweets and all that kind of stuff. He is going to get a bigger audience by doing global policy events because then he's got the British media and the French media and the Danish media and the Canadian media and the Uruguayan media, all following stuff. He's got more reporters, he's got more news coverage, and he's big on that kind of stuff. How many times has Trump talked about ratings? So if you are JD Vance and you're saying, Trump, get out of all that stuff. We don't want anything to do with these people. Well, that means you don't get to do all these and you don't get to have these big audiences. Trump is never going to go for that. From Trump's perspective, in my opinion, it doesn't so much matter what the policy is. What matters is how many cameras and clicks and tweets and all that kind of, how many newspapers and stuff like that are talking about you. And for that, he's got to stay in the dead center of global affairs. Well, you can't do that and be an isolationist. So Vance's entire policy idea results in Trump losing the global audience. So Trump cannot follow Vance's policy idea because Trump's ego cannot sustain the loss of the global audience. Trump doesn't care if you love him or hate him. He just wants to be sure you're watching him. If you watch him and you're booing him, good. I mean, ideally, he wants you to be cheering him. That's what he believes you should be doing. But he would much rather you watch him and boo him than not watch him at all. The only thing that Trump hates is being ignored. He would, to use a pro wrestling term, he would rather have heat than to, which means that's the person the fans boo, than to be someone the fans just don't care about. So ultimately, Vance has largely vanished in the White House. Now, he's the vice president. He's got ceremonial roles. I'm not saying he's going to never do anything again. Of course he is. But the days of him being Trump's pit bull unleashed on the world stage to burn down all of America's relationships and get America into an isolationist state, that's over. And it's not happening. And in hindsight, it was never going to happen because Trump is not going to sit back and say, all of the European media is covering this summit and I'm not there. He's going to say, wait a second, if all the media in Europe and some American media is covering this, I have to be there because that's where the cameras are. So yes, isolationism is dead in the Trump administration. Vance is vanishing, the ever shrinking JD Vance. And yeah, that was my takeaway. Well, one of my takeaways. Either way, fact check me, argue against me, tell me what you think, tell me if you agree, tell me a funny joke. I don't care. Put it in the comments. And I hope everyone has a wonderful Monday.